This is part 5 of Federalist 63. We're going to start at paragraph 16. These are some of the other scholars that I recommend you to look at their books or look at their websites in the case of Gordon Lloyd, and then watch their videos. It will help you a lot. So Madison continues. This is, as I've said before, this is the last Federalist he writes before going back to Virginia, because they were having elections in Virginia for the ratifying convention. So he constantly reminds us of his previous works, Federalists 18, 19, 20, Federalist 10, 51. So he wants us to remember that he's done all these works, and for us, the future generations, to remember that. Okay, so he mentions the stability that the Senate will bring to this new government, but at the same time it says, for those people who are telling us the Senate might get out of hand, become too aristocratic, serve for life, he says, well, the House of Representatives and state legislatures, who actually elect the members of the Senate, at least they did till the first part of the 20th century. He says, by making sure that you elect people that will take these senators out of their seat and put them in the right place, show them where the power truly resides, that people are the fountain of power. Okay, let me start reading here. If reason condemns the suspicion, the same sentence is pronounced by experience. The Constitution of Maryland furnishes the most opposite example. The Senate of that state is elected, as the federal Senate will be, indirectly by the people, and for a term less by 1 year only than the federal Senate. So Maryland was the only state whose senators were elected every 5 years and was elected indirectly. Okay, just like the federal Constitution, the Senate of the federal Constitution, the only difference is that the senators for the federal government are elected for 6 years. It is distinguished also by the remarkable prerogative of filling up its own vacancies within the term of its appointment, and at the same time is not under the control of any such rotation as is provided for the federal Senate. There are some other lesser distinctions which would expose the former to colorable objections that do not lie against the latter. In the federal Senate, therefore, really contained the danger which has been so loudly proclaimed, some symptoms at least of a like danger. Let me read that again, please. If the federal Senate, therefore, really contained the danger which has been so loudly proclaimed, some symptoms, at least, of a like danger ought by this time to have been betrayed by the Senate of Maryland. But no such symptoms have appeared. On the contrary, the jealousies at first entertained by men of the same description with those who view with terror the correspondent part of the federal Constitution have been gradually extinguished by the progress of the experiment, and the Maryland Constitution is daily deriving from the salutary operations of this part of it a reputation in which it will probably not be rivaled by that of any state in the Union. So he says the state that's very similar to what we have done in the federal Constitution, there were people at first that were criticizing it, but with time we see that it's become one of the best state constitutions, at least in that aspect. So he's telling his critics that you are like the same people that were criticizing Maryland Constitution, but look, with the passage of time, it'll show you how wonderfully it works. And then he gives another example. He says, but if anything could silence the jealousies on this subject, it ought to be the British example. The Senate there, instead of being elected for a term of 6 years and of being unconfined to particular families or fortunes, is an hereditary assembly of opulent nobles. The House of Representatives, instead of being elected for 2 years and by the whole body of the people, is elected for 7 years, and in very great proportion by a very small proportion of the people. Remember, we looked at this in the papers relating to the House of Representatives. He says, number one, their Senate definitely serves for life, and it's called the House of Lords. Its House of Commons, its House of Representatives, is called the Parliament. They serve for 7 years. So look at the example of the British. Here unquestionably ought to be seen in full display the aristocratic usurpations and tyranny which are at some future period to be exemplified in the United States. Unfortunately, however, for the anti-federal argument, the British history informs us that this hereditary assembly has not been able to defend itself against the continual encroachment of the House of Representatives, and that it no sooner lost the support of the monarch than it was actually crushed by the weight of the popular branch. So he says, look at Britain. Even though House of Lords is hereditary and everything, as we see throughout the history of Britain, British history, we see that Parliament has gained power more and more at the expense of the House of Lords. And the last line where he says, lost the support of monarch, it is talking about the period of the Civil War in the British history. So gives an example that House of Commons or Parliament is constantly gaining more influence, has and will, and the same thing will happen here. Senate will bring stability, but if it goes too far, the House of Representatives can always stop it. The next paragraph, as far as antiquity can instruct us on this subject, its examples support the reasoning which we have employed. In Sparta, the Ephori, the annual representatives of the people, were found and overmatched for the Senate for life. So in Sparta, the bigger branch, the larger branch, had the advantage eventually. The tribunes of Rome, who were the representatives of people, prevailed. It is well known in almost every contest with the Senate for life. So again, senators in Rome served for life, but we'll see that he says the tribunes gradually overpowered them. The fact is the more remarkable as unanimity was required in every act of the tribunes, even after their number was augmented to 10. It proves the irresistible force possessed by that branch of a free government which has the people on its side. To these examples might be added that of Carthage, whose Senate, according to the testimony of Polybius, a very well-liked historian by the founders, instead of drawing all power into its vortex, had at the commencement of the Second Punic War lost almost the whole of its original portion. Besides the conclusive evidence resulting from this assemblage of facts, that the Federal Senate will never be able to transform itself by gradual usurpations into an independent and aristocratic body, we are warranted in believing that if such a revolution should ever happen from causes which the foresight of a man cannot guard against, the House of Representatives, with the people on their side, will at all times be able to bring back the Constitution to its primitive form and principles. Against the force of the immediate representatives of the people, nothing will be able to maintain even the constitutional authority of the Senate, but such a display of enlightened policy and attachment to the public good as will divide with that branch of the legislature the affections and support of the entire body of the people themselves. So take a look at some of the works of these professors, listen to their lectures, panel discussions, read short articles written by them if you find them, and become more familiar with the American Constitution, American society, American civilization, and learn federalism even better.